With the cancellation of the Star Wars Mando game, the KOTOR remake still being years away, and Star Wars Eclipse just disappearing into the ether to be never heard of again, it's not looking good for Star Wars games, outside of Star Wars Outlaws coming later this year. But today, I bring a new hope. With a new rumored Star Wars game from Creative Assembly. If you're unfamiliar with the studio, they are responsible for the Total War games. So you can imagine my surprise when this rolled across my Twitter feed this afternoon. We have already seen them take on the Warhammer property in fantasy, and they've done a majority of historical settings, so it'll be really interesting to see how they would approach a Star Wars game. We have some information to dive into, and as we always do with these stories, we get to speculate and let our minds run wild with possibilities, but also take things with a heavy grain of salt. So let's jump into the information, because this is a fun one to talk about. So this report first comes from Kyle Knight over at DualShockers. It's a basic report talking about all of the things going on with Creative Assembly, but we'll dive into the main part of it that is important, because it talks a lot about how they reduced a lot of the workers at Creative Assembly. They cancelled Hyenas. They also laid off a bunch of people to kind of focus on the RTS portion. And the part of the report I'm going to read is this bit here. As of October 2023, Total War Star Wars was reportedly the second of 3 new Total War games allegedly in the works at Creative Assembly. With the new Total War games often released annually, aside from 2021, which was the first year without a mainline Total War game since 2014, it's possible that Creative Assembly is gearing up to release Total War Star Wars in the next couple of years. But with 3 new games reportedly in the works, there's no way to know which is the furthest along in development. Currently, Creative Assembler Sophia is hard at work on a new large-scale update for Total War Pharaoh. In a new blog post from the development team earlier this month, Creative Assembly reaffirmed the intention to increase the size of the campaign map and introduce more cultures and ways of engaging with the glorious strategic conquest. Now, of course, reading this is just a massive piece of speculation. We don't know how far the game could potentially be along. And also, I do have a lot of faith here because the way that the Total War Warhammer games have came out over the last couple of years, I've played them all and I've enjoyed them all. They always have pretty good campaigns, and then they bring out quite a few updates and DLCs for each of the games, and I've kept up with them. And obviously there's also 3 Kingdoms, there's Total War Rome, and there's a lot of games that people play from this studio. And it will be really interesting to see how they transition into a sci-fi setting with Star Wars. So with that, let's start speculating. Because there's a lot of potential avenues that this game can go down. Are they going to do the High Republic era, which is multiple different factions from the era, which will allow them to have a little bit more creative freedom when telling a campaign story? Are they going to go more traditional to the Star Wars Conquest, and you get to play out battles of Endor or on Hoth, which would be something interesting to see as well? Are they going to go more smaller scale this time on how they approach battles, a little bit more of a tactical approach? Are there going to be these grand, massive battles, especially if they were to do something like the Clone Wars? I think that is a really great area to add in some characters as well. That period could be fantastic to showcase some of the large scale stuff there. There's also a load of planets that take place and have battles in the Clone Wars as well, but there's a lot you can do here. Force users, giant vehicles, creatures from the Star Wars universe, like Rancor could be a special enemy type from a specific faction, a lot of the droid factions as well. And then I got thinking about what could the strategy portion be like? There could be a galactic star map of taking the different planets, and imagine you could play as the Separatists and like hold a planet hostage essentially and block trade routes, and that can help you against other factions. And I've got a lot of really cool ideas. And then a really cool democracy system that they could play into is the Senate, and that would be how you build relations. And then it could be like a large scale thing of whether or not certain factions are going to help each other, and like whether or not you just want to destroy the entire galaxy or take it over or do a lot of things via diplomacy. There's a lot of potential here within the strategy element of the game. And then I was thinking about potential factions. You could have the Jedi, or the Jedi could be supporting characters to Republic troops of different varieties. You could have the Sith, which could also play into the Separatists. You have the Mandalorians. You could have the different alien races, or the Trandoshans, or the Geonosians, and do something cool there, because they always have these really obscure factions sometimes, or smaller factions in the Total War games. And then they could go even bolder if they decided to. For example, making a non-canon game and doing an Old Republic Total War game. Can you imagine how awesome that would be to have like Darth Revan in that game, or some of the high-profile Jedi like Satele in there as well? And you could do so much and have so much creative freedom with a non-canon scenario, and do massive battles and kind of create your own lore that doesn't necessarily affect the movies or the films, and people that are wanting to engage with it don't have to like keep up with that as part of the wider Star Wars narrative. But you know me, when we get the tiniest bit of news for Star Wars, my mind starts to think of all the different possibilities, because I think Star Wars is such a rich universe, and having a strategy game similar to the Empire at War game way back when, that had a lot of like the RTS elements to it as well, and the strategy elements too. And then you've got the original Star Wars Battlefront games and how you did the Galactic Conquest, and there's just little seeds that have been there. And I think that with the democracy element, there's like systems there, and I feel like that's what they could do. It makes me very excited for those possibilities. I do know a friend of mine who really enjoys modding the Total War games, so it could lead to a load of possibilities there. And then also just modding in general. People could make these entire new factions and like put skins and stuff on. I don't know how it would work gameplay wise. I do know there are different units in the Clone Troopers that could play into that rock, paper, scissors style. So like cavalry could be people on speeder bikes, and then you could have the like range units, the scout snipers, and then you could also have the bigger, like just regular troops, whether or not there'd be any like combat. But just imagine for a moment like a whole legion of Jedi. Like you have a unit, like an elite unit of like, I don't know, 6 or 7 Jedi, and they're fighting Sith, and you've just got those going on in the battlefield. There's electricity flying everywhere, like Sith electricity, force powers and stuff. Man, that makes me excited. But obviously, got to stay a little bit locked in. It's just a rumor at the moment, so that's all we can really speculate from. What do you think? Are you interested in a Total War Star Wars game? Let me know down in the comments section. If you're new to my channel, leave a like on the video, subscribe as well. I'd love to have you come back and check out all of my content. And this has been It's Jimbo, and I'll see you guys next time.